Okay, Shabbat Tov Kulam. We're continuing. The Mishnah told us different cases that require a different amount of judges. We're now dealing with a Kohen Gadol who did something that may get the death penalty. So usually a death penalty is judged by 23 judges. However, the Kohen Gadol, the Mishnah said you need 71. So the Gemara's question is, Menahanimili, how do we know this? Where do we know this from? Where are you getting this law that a Kohen Gadol requires 71 and not 23? Amar Rav Ada bar Ahava. So Rav Ada bar Ahava said, the Amar because it says in Pasuk, Kol hadavar hagadol yaviu elecha. It says when Yitro told Moshe Rabbeinu to make courts, he said, Kol hadavar hagadol yaviu elecha. Anything that's big, they should take to you. What does it mean, anything that's big? Similarly, the way we learned the Gemara last week, Devarav shel gadol. It's when you have something to do with a Kohen Gadol. It's something with a great person. Last week we learned about a prince in the tribes of Israel. This week we're learning about a Kohen Gadol, a big person. Kol hadavar hagadol. Anything that has to do with a big person has to be brought to Moshe in the Midbar. And Moshe is the equivalent of the Sanhedrin Hagadol, the 71 judges. So now the Gemara is going to bring down a Braita that at odds with Rav Ada's explanation. Meitzvei, they learned in the Braita. Davar Gadol, when it says in the pasuk Davar Gadol, Yitro said any big thing they have, they should take to you. You know what that means? Davar Kasha, anything that's hard, anything that they cannot understand. Ata Omer Davar Kasha. You're saying it means something hard, or Einu El Davar Shel Gadol. Maybe it means anything about a big person, like we want to learn, like Ada was learning. Because later on, when it says that they implemented Yitro's advice, it says et hadavar hakasha yeviun el Moshe. They brought the hard thing to Moshe. So hare davar kasha amar. You see, it says hard. So when it says davar hagadol initially, it actually meant davar hakasha. It actually meant something hard. So this is at odds with Rav Ada, because Rav Ada says when it says gadol, it means about a great person. But here you see gadol means kasha. That's the way they want to learn in this Braita. The Gemara said, "Who the Amr ki hatana?" Rav Ada actually has a different Tana, a different rabbi at the time of the Mishnah, a different Braita that learns like him, the Tanya, because he learned in the Braita Davar Gadol. When it says Davar Gadol, it means Davar of Shel Gadol. It means that of a great person, a matter of a great person, like a prince, like a Kohen Gadol. Ata Amr Davar Shel Gadol. You're telling me it means about a great person, like a Kohen Gadol. Or Einu El Davar Kasha, maybe it means only something hard. It says no, because when it says Davar HaKasha, Hare Davar Kasha Amr. Later, when it says they brought hard things to Moshe, that's where it's talking about the hard things. Hamani Mekayim Davar Gadol. So why do I need the word Davar Gadol? It cannot mean the same thing. So Davar of Shel Gadol. It means that of a great person. So really, the two Brightot are the one Brightot, the first Brightot we brought down says when it says Davar Gadol, it means Davar Kasha. And how do I know that? Because later on it says Davar Kasha. It explains what Davar Gadol is. The second Braita says no. Davar Kasha is Davar Kasha. Davar Gadol is Davar of Shel Gadol. It's not explaining to me what it is. It's rather telling me another reason. Tana. Now, this Tana, the first Braita that said Gadol means Kasha, Kasha means Gadol, Trey Kara Lamali. Then why do I need it once to tell me Kasha? Why I need to say Gadol? Just say it once. Why you have to tell me two different ways? It says because one pasuk was to tell you of the advice that Yitro gave, and one pasuk was to tell us that they listened to the advice. And a lot of times it's easy to talk, much harder to implement. So therefore, when they actually implemented what they talked about, that's why the pasuk mentioned it again. That's why it said it twice. And now the other Braita, the other rabbi, why doesn't he learn this way? Why doesn't he say one pasuk to teach us that they were taught about it and one that they actually did it? He says, Im Kain, if that was the lesson that you want to learn, that one is to tell us that that was the idea to do, and one was that they did it, lichtov, or gadol gadol, or kasha kasha, then write it twice, the same word. Write davar gadol, or davar kasha. It means a hard thing, say it twice, the same thing, then I'll know. Once they talked about it, once they did it. my gadol or my kosher. Why once gadol and once kosher? Shema mino tarte. We learned two things from here. We learned that when it was something hard, they brought it to Moshe Rabbeinu, and if it was something about an adam gadol, about a kohen gadol or a prince or someone else that's very kosher in the Jewish community, their cases would be brought to the 71 judges, which is equivalent to Moshe Rabbeinu, and not to the 23 judges. So at this point, if a kohen gadol is chayav mitah for anything, he has to be judged in front of 71 judges. Now comes a question from Rabbi Elazar based on what we just learned. Boy, Rabbi Elazar, shoro shel kohen gadol v'kamo. Okay, you have to remember a little bit from last week. Last week we said there's a pasuk that says a shor, an ox that gores and kills a person, you have to stone him to death. And then it said, as you would kill his owner, right? And we said, oh, it doesn't mean you actually kill his owner. Rather, the same way you kill his owner, meaning you have to take him to a beit din of 23, you have to take this ox and judge him at a beit din of 23. That's what we learned last week. Because it says, ubalo yumat, and the master also dies. And that's what we learned, that he dies like the master in a court of 23. Now, the question is here, what about by kohen gadol? Let's see the Gemara. Do we compare the ox to its owner and say, if the kohen gadol's ox killed someone, do we compare it to the kohen gadol and say, if the kohen gadol has to be chayav mitah, you have to take him to a court of 71. So then the ox, which is comparable to the owner, should be also judged at a court of 71. So you're taking him to the Sanhedrin Agadol. Or do we say, when the pasuk compares the ox to his master, or dilma, lemitas balim de alma medamile, that we compare it to most owners, and most owners get to beit din of 23 when it comes to capital punishment. So the question of Rabbi Elazar is, does the shor of the kohen gadol have a special din that it gets judged by 71, or is the shor compared to any other shor and any other owner that would be with 23? The Gemara does not answer this question. I'll tell you what the Rambam says in a minute. Omer Abaya says from this question, he extrapolates a teaching. He says as follows: Mitka mebayi lesharai. The fact that he asked the question only about the ox, because the ox in the pasuk compares the ox to the owner. That's why I would think 71, 23, right? I have that question. Miklal de memona pshitale. Simply, this means that if any other object of the kohen gadol caused damages, it doesn't have to be with 71. It can be judged in a regular case of 3 judges when it comes to other damages. So the fact that he just picked shor because shor has a pasuk that's compared to the owner, that's where the question exists. Any other movable object that causes damage by the kohen gadol's property will need to only be judged by 3 and not by 71. The Gemara says pshita is obvious, of course. Why would I think anything else? The Gemara answers mahazutema. What would I have thought? Anything that belongs to the big person. Anything that happens to the big person, anything that belongs to the kohen gadol would need 71. Therefore, Rabbi is teaching us that that's not the case. The only time the kohen gadol goes to 71 is if he himself is chayav mitah, and there's a question regarding his shor. The Gemara didn't answer about the shor, so the Rambam says the halacha, and the halacha is not clear. In fact, the later sages argue on what the Rambam held. So we have really 2 opinions. We have the Radbaz. The Radbaz holds. He says that the Radbaz holds that it needs 71. The Radbaz holds that the shor aniskal, the shor that has to get killed that belongs to the kohen gadol, would have to be done with 71 judges, the full Sanhedrin Agadol. But whereas the Lechem Mishnah, on the other hand, holds the case needs only, the opposite. The Radbaz holds 23, and the Lechem Mishnah holds 71. So the machlokes in how to learn the Rambam. The Rambam is not clear. You have this machlokes, the Ranbaz and the Lechem Mishnah. Lechem Mishnah 71, Ranbaz says 23. Okay, so far so good. Fine. Moving on to the next case. Ein motzi'in, we do not go out to war for a war of reshut, a optional war. What's considered an optional war and what's considered a war of mitzvah? So the Meiri explains as follows. I'm going to read to you in English. The Meiri says an optional war for the Jewish government is one that is waged in order to settle a dispute with a foreign nation, to demonstrate power to other nations, or in order to conquer territory or gain economic benefits. For example, to get some natural resources that another country has. These are optional wars. A mitzvah war, those are the ones that they had to do in Yeshua's time to conquer Eretz Yisrael. So anyone to conquer Eretz Yisrael is considered a mitzvah war. To fight Amalek is a mitzvah war. And in order to protect ourselves, that's also considered a war of a mitzvah, and they do not need authorization by Sanhedrin when it's a mitzvah war. Whereas if it's a war of reshut, it is considered, they need to go and get authorization from Sanhedrin. Just to segue for 1 minute, it was just Yom HaAtzmaut, it was just Israeli Independence Day. Chamavadia would say that every time you see a Jewish soldier, an IDF soldier, you have to express love for that soldier. So it's very important in all our shuls that we say the Mishaberach l'Chayalei Israel, for the soldiers of Israel. They protect us. Look, this past week, in the Haredi city of Elad, where my brother-in-law lives, there was a Baruch Boje. He lives in Elad, and that's the city. Elad. It's actually a Haredi Sephardic predominantly city, and there's a lot of enemies. Therefore, we have our soldiers, we have our stuff. We have to give them a lot of respect. We have to love them. We have to pray for them. They are doing a mitzvah war by protecting the Jewish people in Eretz Yisrael. Okay. Now, so we said a reshut war, a war of optional, get some sort of economic benefit or something like that. You have to get authorization. Not immediately. How do we know this? That's Gemara's question. Not immediately. How do we know this? Amar Rabbi Abahu. Rabbi Abahu said, "The Amar Krah," as it says in Pasuk, "V'lifnei Elazar HaKohen ya'amod," and before Elazar the Kohen, they shall stand. So this is in the Torah, talking about when they would go out to war, and it says that they would stand in front of Elazar HaKohen. And the pasuk later in the pasuk continues. If you want to see the full verse, look on the Hebrew side on the right column towards the bottom, Torah or Shalom, pasuk Zayin. Lifnei Elazar HaKohen ya'amod b'shaloi b'mishpat ha'urim lifnei Hashem al piv yitzeu v'al piv yavou. Who, him, v'chol b'nei Yisrael, and all the Jewish people, ito, with him, v'chol ha'eda, and all the congregation. So these last few words, that's what the Gemara is going to start to darshan. It says, who is the HaMelech? This is the king. This would be Yehoshua going into Eretz Yisrael. V'chol b'nei Yisrael ito, and all of the Jewish people with him, zeh meshuach milchama. This is the special kohen that was set up for war. He was to go with the Jews to war. He would tell them, if you're scared, go home. If you have this, go home. That was the Meshuach Milchama. The Chol Ha'edah Zeh Sanhedrin. And when it says the Chol Ha'edah, all the congregation, that is the Sanhedrin. So you see, you have to get permission from all. Gemara says, I don't see that. It doesn't say I have to get authorization. B'dilma l'Sanhedrin who dekamar l'Rachmana, the L'shai will be one of it too. Maybe it means that these people, including the Sanhedrin, need to ask the Urim V'tumim. Urim V'tumim was the Chayshin, the breastplate that the Kohen Gadol wore. They had the stones with letters on them. There was a special parchment folded in between the Choshen. And when you asked the Choshen a question, the Urim V'tumim, the letters would light up and you would have your answer. So maybe it means the Sanhedrin can ask Urim V'tumim. So the Gemara says they have a different source. Ela. Kihada Amr of Acha Bar Bizna Amr of Shimon Chasido. Kinor hayu tolu mamala mimitato shel David. There was a kinor that hung on top of David HaMelech's bed. Okay, first of all, I know the art school translates kinor as a harp, but it's actually a lyre. A lyre it's the name of an instrument. It's similar to a harp, but the more accurate translation is a lyre. It was actually a an eolin lyre, which means an eolin harp, if you want to call it a harp. It is a wind harp. You place it in the wind, and the wind makes it play. So actually, just a couple minutes ago, I learned it on Shabbat, but I wasn't able to use YouTube on Shabbat. So I used YouTube today, and I put alien harp, alien lyre, and it shows there a harp that they leave in the wind, and the wind, when it blows, it starts to play music. So that's the harp lyre that David Melech had. And he put it on top of his bed for what? In order to wake him up. When it came midnight, he didn't have the iPhone to play him music when he wakes up, so he had his harp or lyre, and ruach tzifonit min hashevet bo v'hayav minagim alav. Now there would be a northern wind that would blow at that time. The wind would come at that time, and it would blow on the musical instrument, and it would start to play music. And that's how David Melech woke up at Chatzot. Miyad haya David omid v'asek b'Torah ad she'ala amud hashachar. David Melech would get up and he would start to learn Torah. You should know, Rabotai, the Rambam tells us, and it's brought down in many different places, that the person's most wisdom in Torah comes from learning at night. When a person learns at night, it's much more peaceful in the world and there's less distractions. And so therefore he's able to actually learn and understand much more at night than he would during the day. But this obviously means that he's sleeping in the evening and then waking up at night to learn. Because if you're going to try to work all day and then come to learn at night, your head's not going to work. Yes, question.
There's any topic, or it's just with Torah?
The Rambam says Torah, but Havdil, because he says it's because you can have better concentration. At night, the Torah will be even more, but that factor of concentration would be good for anything. I mean, if during the day you have the kids running around, you have the wife nagging, you have a lot of different things going on. But when it comes night, if you're lucky and everyone's sleeping, right, then you'll be able to concentrate better. But that requires someone to sleep in the evening. When I was learning this on Shabbat, I actually had some people said that they know people that do this even till today, that they go to sleep like 7 p.m. and they sleep 6 hours. 1, 2 o'clock, they're already up and they start learning from 2 o'clock till Shacharit. And then they stay up until 7. And every day they go to sleep at 7.
So there's not in the evening, there's after Chatzot.
They wake up around 1 o'clock, which is Chatzot. Yeah. They go to sleep at 7ish and they wake up at Chatzot. And that's it. They're learning from there till Shacharit. And then Shacharit, they go to work. Then they come back home and they go to sleep. Halavai, we should have that opportunity. Okay. Now, so he started learning Torah. Kivan Shala Amud Shachar, once dawn, which is 72 minutes before sunrise came, Nichnes tu Chachmei Yisrael Etzlo. The sages of the Jewish people came to him. Amr Lo, they said to David HaMelech, Aduneinu HaMelech, Amecha Yisrael Tzrichin LeParnasa. The same problem we have till today. The Jewish people need Parnasa. David HaMelech, help us, we need Parnasa. David HaMelech said, what's the big deal? Amr Lein, B'chu, Parnasu, Zemizeh. Tell everybody to go to the Jewish stores. It's a little more expensive, but if everyone spends money by each other, the money will stay here and everybody will have money. They said, you cannot give a lion a little bit of food. There's some fancy restaurants. Once my wife said, let's go to this fancy restaurant. So we went. And I didn't eat much that day because I'm going to go to the restaurant. I wanted to eat well. We ordered for a big amount of money and came out a big plate with 3 little pieces of something on it. and that was the dinner. So in the shir on Shabbos, someone says it's because you were supposed to eat the plate also. You're spending all the money for the plate. So that's what they said to David HaMelech. They said you can't take a little bit of food and give it to the Ari. You have to give a lot of food. So, and then they said, if you have an empty pit, you cannot go into the empty pit, take out some more dirt, and then fill it back up with it. Or the way the Tosfos explains is that you want to make a well, not a well, but a water to go into a pit. If it's raining, it's not going to go straight into the pit and fill it all the way up. You got to create channels around the pit so water from more than one surface area goes into there to fill it up. We need it from other sources. That's the way we've been talking. So Amr Lahem, David Mel said to them, okay, you got a problem, so we need to get some more money. Go out and fight against those countries around us, the foreign countries. Yeah, right away, what they do? Yoatzin ba'Achitofel. They went to ask Achitofel. Achitofel was one of the advisors of David Melech. We're going to see a pasuk later on. Going to bring half the pasuk, but in the pasuk, if you want to look in the Torah or Hashalom, on the next page, it says over there that if you got advice from Achitofel, it's as if you got advice from Hashem. That's how this guy's advice was so special. Unfortunately, though, he went against David Melech when Avshalom was rebelling after killing Amnon. He rebelled and he gave advice to Avshalom, terrible advice. He told him to sleep with David Melech's wives. Terrible advice Achitofel gave. In the end, Achitofel ended up killing himself, committing suicide. Just to show you could be very smart, but if you don't stay in the right path, you can really lose it. Anyway, they went to Achitofel and they asked him. Then they went to the Sanhedrin. They went to Sanhedrin to get authorization. And then they asked the Urim Bitumim. So you see that they went to the Sanhedrin for authorization for war when it was a Malchemet Reshut, when it was an optional war. Rav Yosef. Yosef says, "My kira, what's the pasuk? Where are you basing this on? This whole story? It's nice, but which pasuk you have for this?" The more answers are Achitofel. After they went to Achitofel, Benayu. Even okay. Thank you, Solomon. You have to tell me later on. Achre Achitofel, Benayu ben Yehoyada, ve'Evyotzer v'Tzar Tzavol Melech Yoav. Achitofel ze Yoet. Achitofel is the advisor. V'chein hu oimer, as it says, v'atzat Achitofel asher ya'at. If you want to continue the pasuk, look at the Torah or Hashalom, that it says asher ya'at b'yamim ahim kasher yishal ish b'davar ha'elohim. It's as if you ask God for advice when you talk to Achitofel. Then the pasuk says ubenayu ben Yehoyada. In fact, the actual pasuk in Divrei Yamim does not say benayu ben Yehoyada. It says Yehoyada ben Benayu. However, that's for Mefarshim to deal with that. However, that was the Sanhedrin. Zu Sanhedrin. He was the Avbetin. He was the Sanhedrin. Evyatar, and then Evyatar was the remaining Kohen. He was the Kohen Gadol. Elu Urim v'Tumim. This was the Urim v'Tumim that they went and to consult. That's what it says. Uvaneyo ben Yehoyada al hakreti ha'pleti. Benayo ben Yehoyada was on the kreti upleti. That means they went to get authorization from Benayo, and then from the kreti ha'pleti. That's the way Rashi learns. However, Tosfos learns that kreti upleti is actually Benayo ben Yehoyada. It's actually Benayo ben Yehoyada himself was called kreti upleti. Lama nikra Shimon kreti upleti. Why was it called kreti upleti? Kireti shikorotin divrehen. That they cut their words very precisely. Perfect gem of words. Either the Urim V'Tumim gave the exact answer, or the Sanhedrin, which is Benayo, spoke very accurately. Ufleti shemufla'in ma'asehen, and peleti, because it was the pella, it was wondrous their answers that they gave. And afterwards, they went to the general of the army, who was Yoav, who was the Sar Tzova, he was the commander of the king's army. Here we see that Sanhedrin requiring authorization from Sanhedrin for a Melchemet Reshut. Amr Rav Yitzchak, Bereid Rav Adav, Amr Rav Yitzchak bar Abdumi. My kira, what's the pasuk that tells David Melech would use his lyre or his harp to wake him up in the morning, his Elon harp to wake him up? So the Gemara says, it says in pasuk, Urechiv odi, Ura nevel v'chinor, A'iro shachar. So it says over there, awake, my soul, awake, the musical instruments, A'ira Shachar, I shall awaken in the morning. Meaning, most people wake up after sunlight. David Melech was A'ira Shachar, he woke up the sunlight. He woke up before the sunlight. Okay, so far, so good. Any questions on this? No, moving along. The Ein Mosfin al Ha'ir. You cannot add on to the Kedushat of Yerushalayim or to the Kedushat of the Beit HaMikdash unless you have Sanhedrin authorizing the expansion of those areas. The reason being is, in Yerushalayim, you're allowed to eat kachim kalim. These are certain types of korbanot that you're allowed to eat anywhere in Jerusalem. Whereas there was something called kachim, the korbanot that had to be eaten in the Beit HaMikdash, because there are different kiddushot in those areas. So when you want to expand those areas, you have to have an authorization of Sanhedrin to be able to expand those areas. How do I know? How do I know that I need Sanhedrin to expand? Amrav Shimi Bar Chia. It says as follows. Omar Kro. It says in Pasuk. Kechol asher ani mare otecha et tavnit hamishkan lechen ta'asu. Moshe Rabbeinu said, everything that I'm going to show you how to build a mishkan, that's how you should do. What does it mean lechen ta'asu? This is what you should do. Ledorot haba'im. It means for future generations. Moshe Rabbeinu said, the same way I need to be here to make the Mishkan, Moshe Rabbeinu is equal to the Sanhedrin. So he says, in the future, if you want to expand the Kedushat of Yerushalayim or the Beit HaMikdash, you need to have the entire Beit in there. We learned that from the word V'chein ta'asu. Just like you did by the Mishkan, so shall you should do for the future. So now, the word V'chein ta'asu is going to be problematic when it comes to the utensils of the Mishkan and the Beit HaMikdash. Just background information. During the Mishkan, when they wanted to sanctify the utensils, the kelim that they use in the Mishkan, Moshe Rabbeinu had to put a special oil on them. Okay? Anointing oil. Semen HaMishcha. When it came to the Beit HaMikdash, in order to sanctify a keli in the Beit HaMikdash, you did not need the oil. Rather, you would just use the keli. Once you use the keli, then it got its kedusha. Okay, now, Motiv Rav says, Kol kelim she'asa Moshe mishchatan mikachan. He used the oil to be mikadosh then. From then on, anytime you use the keli, that made it kadosh. But why? Nema. It says by kelim v'chein ta'asu. So you should do. Just like Moshe Rabbeinu used the oil to mikadosh the kelim, so should you do in the future. Use the special shemen hamishcha to mikadosh it, l'dorot habayin, for the future. If v'chein ta'asu means for the future, you have to say the same thing by the kelim. The Gemara answers, Shani Hatam, there it's different by the kelim. Why? The Omar Kra, because the pasuk says, Vayimshochem vaykadesh otam. The Moshe Rabbeinu used the oil for those kelim. Otam, those kelim. Otam b'mishichat. Those kelim with oil, below lidorot b'mishichat. And not for the future generations with Mishecha. Even though it says the word V'chein ta'asu, it says the word Otam. And when it says Otam, Otam means these and no more. Gemara says, but why are you learning it that way? The Amo, Rabbi asks the question, Otam b'mshicha, it means those had to be done with Shicha, Viladorot, and for the future generations, Im Mishicha, Iblavoida. Or you can do with Mashicha, with oil, or you use it and then it becomes Kaddish. You can do either or, because it says V'chein ta'asu. So maybe you should also do Mashicha in the future, and you could do it with using either way. But it doesn't mean only the ones in the Mishkan have to be done with Mashicha and nothing else. It doesn't tell me because it says V'chein ta'asu. I'm Rav Papa, I have a whole different pasuk. Why? Oh my God, it says in pasuk, Asher yisharatu bam ba'kodesh, which will use and become kadosh. That's the way they're translating the pasuk. Asher yishatu bam ba'kodesh. When you use it, it becomes kadosh. Hakatuv tilain b'shirut. So the pasuk is saying at some point They can become kadosh through usage. So elo otam lamali. So wait. So if you're telling me there's a pasuk that said that in the future it's only going to become kadosh when you use them. So why, when it says Moshe used mashicha, he used the oil, how come I have to say otam? Why does I have to say otam there? I see there's a pasuk that tells me in the future it's going to be used. So oil, I know only going to be by Moshe because it says why I don't need the word otam. Gemara says ilav otam. If it wasn't for the word otam, hava mina lidorot b'mshicha u'avodah. I would think no. I would have to do like Moshe Rabbeinu, and if it didn't say the word otam, I would think Moshe Rabbeinu used mashicha. We have to also, and there's a pasuk that you have to use it, so you need to do both for the future. Hava mina lidorot b'mshicha u'avodah. I would have to use oil and the usage to make it kadosh. The hachetim v'chein ta'asu. Anoint me because it's written v'chein ta'asu. Otam. Therefore, it says otam. Otam b'mshicha. Lo l'dorot b'mshicha. Moshe Rabbeinu had done with mashicha, with oil, but not in the future. The future, yisharatu asher yisharatu bamba kodesh. You use them, it becomes kodesh, and that oil. And therefore, from here we see by the kelim you cannot learn from it, but for the kedushat of the Mishkan, we do learn b'chein ta'asu that in order to expand the kedusha of Yerushalayim or to expand the kedusha of the Beit Mikdash, you would need Moshe Rabbeinu or his equivalent, which are the Sanhedrin HaGadol. Okay. Any questions here? Good so far? Okay, moving on. The Ein Os in Sanhedraot. We do not make the small Sanhedrot unless the 71 judges are involved. Right? The small Sanhedrot Ketana, the ones of 23 that we have in each city that judge capital cases. And how do we know this? As we see in Moshe, the case Sanhedraot, Moshe Rabbeinu was equivalent to 71, and he made all the small bedins, right? Under Yitro's advice, he made all the small bedins. So you see, Moshe Rabbeinu made the small bedins. Same thing. Moshe Rabbeinu is equivalent to Sanhedrin HaGadol. Sanhedrin HaGadol has to establish all the smaller bedins, those smaller Sanhedrinot Ketanot. Tanu Rabbanan. The rabbis taught in a Braita. Menayin shema'amidin shoftim le'Yisrael. From where do we see judges shall be appointed over Israel? Talmud Laim, because it says in pasuk shoftim v'shoftim titin l'cha b'chol sharecha b'chol shevetecha, right? So shoftim, it says you have to have judges. Titain, you have to place. You see, you need judges. Shotrim le'Yisrael menayin. How do you know I need officers of the courts? Because it says shotrim titain. You should place officers. I will tell you, it's very important to realize. Let's talk a second about secular government. Every branch of government in the U.S. has its own enforcers. For example, we'll start with the city level. Here in New York City, we have the mayor who has the police. He's in charge of the police. It's his police commissioner. He appoints them. He controls the police. That gives him power as a mayor. The governor has the state troopers, the state police work for him. That's how he has his power to enforce law. The same thing with the president. The president has both the military and the FBI that works for him. The FBI for the states, and outside the military National Guard that's all for the country. Because without enforcers of the law, without power, you don't have any law. So the Torah tells us when you make the law, the Torah similarly tells us when you have judges, you're required to have officers with it in order to enforce the law. Shoftim l'chol shevet v'shevet minayin. How do I know I need judges for every shevet? Shoftim l'shvatecha, for your shevet. Shoftim l'chol shevet v'shevet minayin. How do I know I need officers for each one? Shotrim l'shvatecha. You need shotrim for your shevet. Shoftim l'chol erva minayin. How do I know I need it for each and every city? Shoftim l'sha'arecha. Sha'arecha is your city, the gates to the city. Shotrim l'chol irva irminayin. How do I know I need officers of the court? Shotrim l'sha'arecha. Because it says you need shotrim for your gates. Rabbi Yehuda says, Echad memune al kulan. You need another court, the great Sanhedrin, on top of all of them. Shenemar titen lacha. You shall appoint for yourselves. Now, this is a very important teaching, at least to me. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, L'shvatecha b'shafetu. You have to judge your tribe. Mitzvah b'shevet ladun et shifto. It's a mitzvah for the shevet to judge its own tribe. Why does that hold true? Why should one tribe only seek judgment from its own members? It's because, Abutai, the way to understand it is that the judges of their own tribe understand their tribe members more than other judges from different tribes. For example, it's very hard sometimes for Ashkenaz rabbis to have a good understanding of Sephardic Kehilot or Bukharian Kehilot. They even though they're spending time with us and stuff like this, they just don't understand the dynamics and the family dynamics and relationships that exist to what we have compared to what they have. They're coming from a different cultural upbringing and stuff like that. Therefore, it's very important, right? Like Solomon said, Tzimchai said, jurors of your peers. If they really work of your peers, that's what it is. They have to come from your understanding of it. Therefore, the judges have to be from your shevet. Very important to remember that. People, I've seen it happen. The people went to Ashkenaz rabbis, asked him a question, and he gave a great answer. Just it wasn't applicable to this person in his situation because he's coming from a different family dynamic, different family issues, and it's not the same answer. If the guy was more, the rabbi was more involved and knew more of the community, and knew understand its nuances better, maybe he would have had a better answer. Okay. The osin ir hanidahat. We don't make an ir hanidahat. An ir hanidahat, mentioned already a couple of times, it's a city that went for avodah zarah. Certain amount of members in the city went for avodah zarah. We had it last week. What happens is once you have a city that is an ir hanidachat, that the majority of its members went after avodah zarah, the Great Sanhedrin has to first decide it is ir hanidachat. Sanhedrin, the Great Sanhedrin agrees that it's an ir hanidachat. Now they come to that city. If needed, they come with a force, an army, and they subdue the city, and then they judge each member separately. The member of that city that actually served avodah zarah, he is beheaded with a sword rather than being stoned, which is the usual penalty for avodah zarah. But those who are innocent, those in the city who live there and didn't serve avodah zarah, they are not killed. However, all the property that was in that city must be destroyed, burnt completely. Can no one ever use it forever? All the buildings and all the infrastructure in that city must be destroyed, and it can never be repopulated or rebuilt. That city has to be gone forever. So, how do we know we make a city a ir hanidacha? The Amar Kra, because it says in Pasuk, when they have someone doing avodah zarah, it says ishahu or ishahahi. You take out that man or that woman. You take them out and you bring them to the gates and you judge them. You bring out an individual. But you do not take out a whole city to the gate. The whole city that went to avodah zarah, then they are judged as an ir hanidachat by the Sanhedrin HaGadol. In osin ir hanidahat b'sefa. The Mishnah said a border town does not become an ir hanidachat. If a town on the border of Eretz Yisrael serving avodah zarah, even though it should be considered ir hanidachat, it does not. Why? My tano, because it says in Pasuk, mikir becha amar Rachmana, a city in your midst of Eretz Yisrael has to be in the middle of Eretz Yisrael. Below min hasefa, and not from the border. So if a border city is serving avodah zarah, they do not get killed out. Below shalosh arei hanidahat. You don't make 3 cities an ir hanidachat. What does this mean? Because it says achat. It says achat arecha, one of your cities. Achat of osin achat oshitan. You make 1 or 2. Dichtiv arecha, because it says your towns in plural. Tanarabanan. Achat says 1. Achat below shalosh, not 3. Ata omer achat below shalosh or any achat below shitan. Maybe it means 1 and not even 2. Why are you saying just not 3? Shu omer, because it says arecha. It says in plural your cities. Are shitayim amor. So therefore, it means two. How do I fulfill the word one? One and not three. One, two. One and two is still considered one, and three would already be too many. Now, what does this mean? You can't make three cities Is it at the same time, same place, same area? So Zminin Amarav, sometimes Rav would say, Betin Echad Hu De'enosin. One Betin cannot make more than two cities Hanidachad. But if you have different bedins, different Sanhedrin Agados, meaning a member dies or a member resigns or leaves and they replace them with somebody else, then you have a new bedin, they can make another two cities. That's the way Rab would sometimes explain it. The Zimran Amar, but sometimes Rab would explain it differently. He would say, no, that once you reach two cities in Ir never again can you make another Ir Hanidachat. By the way, Rabbi the Gemara later on in Masechet Sanhedrin Daf 71 says that this case of Ir Hanidachat actually never happened. It was all theoretical. Okay? Now, my time in the Rab. What is Rab's reasoning that you should never do more than two cities Ir Hanidachat? The Shum Korcha. Because you're going to make Eretz Yisrael a desolate place, nowhere you could live. Every other city becomes Ir Hanidachat. There's no living there. They're all going to be desolate cities. We don't want that. Amar Rish Lakish had a different understanding in Rab's second teaching. Lo shanu el b'mokom echad. They said it's only if it's in the same area. Eretz Yisrael was known as three parts of Eretz Yisrael: north, south, and the Transjordan. So you had the Yehuda in the south, you had the Galil in the north, and you had the Ever Yarden across the Jordan. So he says at least it's in each different place you can have more than two. Two in the Transjordan, two in the Yehuda, two in the Galil. You can make it in two or three places. You can make two cities. It says no, enosin. We don't make it, even though it's in different regions of Eretz Yisrael. We don't make more than two Ernidachat Mishum Karcha because you don't want it to become empty. We had a bright like Yochanan. We do not make three cities in Ernidachat. We make two. Like one in Yehuda, one in Galil. But two in Yehuda and two in Galil, we do not do. And if they're on the border, we don't even make one. My tama, what's the reason? Why, when it comes to the border, we don't do it? Because logistics, because of tactical reasons. Shema Yishma'u Nachrim, Israel. As soon as the Jews, the Goyim hear that the border, right, the Iron Dome is down, or there's no border patrol on the border, all the crazy Arabs who want to come kill us come running through the border. So therefore, you have to have a border city. You can't have it empty. Well, the enemies are going to come through the empty border city. Mari said, why are you saying me tactical logistic reasons? We have a pasuk. We said because it says mikirbecha, from your midst, amarachmana. Why you have to tell me below minasefar and not from the border? Why you have to tell me because of a military reason? So Reb Shimon, it's Reb Shimon. And every time Reb Shimon would learn, the Darish Tama Dikra, he would explain a pasuk. He would explain the pasuk with an understanding of the pasuk, and therefore he explained it as such. He's just giving an explanation why it says Mikir Becha from your midst and not from the border, because the border will become empty and it would be a problem for the security of Eretz Yisrael. Okay, this is where we're going to get up to for today. Any questions at this point?